Hello everybody, welcome back. My name is Mr. Rader, and in this participation in government video, we're going to examine the amicus brief for students, and we're going to look specifically at extension D, learning more about how to summarize and interpret case opinions, precedents, and analog cases to prepare our case brief. And we'll look specifically at how to use the summary and interpretation organizer for our chosen case, the precedent, and analogs. So at this point in the unit of study, you should have decided on a case in the current docket of the Supreme Court of the United States, or the SCOTUS. And in the organizer, what you're going to do is identify a brief summary of the facts for each of the cases that you've looked up before, restate the question of each case, and provide a summary of the opinion provided by the court in this case. So your teacher will likely have you start off with this question. So given your understanding of your Supreme Court case, what would you advise the court to do? What would you like the Supreme Court to do in terms of their ruling? And in terms of discussion, your teacher will probably ask you what impacts their decisions will have if the justices choose different decisions. Consider the stake that you have in this, how the court case specifically affects you, and begin to consider some of the preliminary arguments that we could make to support our position. And in this lesson for the independent work, what you'll do is look at the legal research that you've done so far over the course of the unit, and then working with your group mates, you'll want to share the precedent and analogous cases so that you can complete the summary and interpretation organizer, and really kind of think together about, given all that we've read about our cases, what's our understanding of what's happening so far. So to help you with the completion of the summary and interpretation organizer, I would recommend going back to the legal research organizer and thinking through the 3 steps that you engaged in when conducting legal research. And there are other videos in this series on the Passport to Social Studies video series for the legal research. And you may remember, if you saw one of our previous installments, we looked at the court case of Citizens United versus the Federal Election Commission in the United States District Court, and then ultimately in the Supreme Court of the United States. And if you remember, we looked at the original case, a skim of each of the major cases themselves in terms of relevant rights, arguments, and precedent. Remember, we have all these notes that speak to these specific precedents. And then analog cases, or similar cases that resolve similar questions. So using my notes from the Extension C Legal Research Organizer, I began to partially fill out the summary and interpretation organizer that you can use for your reference, even though the cases will obviously be different because you're looking at a current case and I looked at a case that occurred over 10 years ago. The same ideas apply. So we'll use this table to track the cases, and then your thoughts on the precedent, and then specific analogs that could relate to the position. So you'll want to provide, again, a brief summary of what are the facts of the case and why did it make its way to the Supreme Court or to the district court, depending on the case itself. You want to restate the constitutional questions. So in the case of Citizens United, it was a First Amendment case. And then a brief summary of the opinion that was actually provided by the court in that particular case. And then for the precedent and the analogs, what you're going to want to also do is explain how the case itself might support the argument you would make in your amicus brief. So as you can see from this sample response that I wrote out, I was making a decision that would have supported the dissenting position of the 4 justices who were in the minority of the Citizens United, which basically argued that the Citizens United decision was decided incorrectly. And for this example, the example that I said was this case, or the case McConnell versus the Federal Election Commission in 2003, decided a year after the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act of 2002. The case can support my argument I'm making in my amicus brief because the court ruled that the restriction of spending in this law was justified by the government's legitimate interest in preventing the perception of corruption and did not really limit freedom of speech. The court also rejected the argument that Congress had exceeded its authority to regulate elections under Article 1, Section 4 of the Constitution, which shows me that the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act was perfectly constitutional. Okay, so in summation, you'll want to use the information in this organizer to begin outlining your case in your amicus brief to explain to the Supreme Court of the United States why your position is supported with case precedent and with analog cases that helps you to really illustrate to the Supreme Court justices why they should rule in favor of your ideas. Right, so in the lesson itself, your teacher may have you do as a wrap up, given the precedent and the analogs that you've read for the current court docket, what are the best possible arguments that can be offered to support your position? And then you'll use this information to help you with the creation of your amicus brief. All right, everybody, I hope that you have a great day, and I look forward to our next installment in this series.